What's going down, Diggletdreamers? Mathera's back for an overview video, a draft overview video. This is the Vitality Draft League Season 3. If you haven't really been watching my videos for a while, you might not remember the Vitality Draft League. It's the league that I'm a part of. The last time, Season 2, was pre-Isle of Armor. So there's actually a lot of new changes going into this season. A bunch of new Pokemon from, like Crown Tundra, and even a few from Isle of Armor, as well as a bunch of new moves and stuff, and a bunch of Pokemon getting new moves and stuff like that. So I'm very excited. You can see a little bit of preview of my draft in front of you right now, but of course I'm going to go over each one of these Pokemon bit by bit. Maybe tell you a little bit of a story about why I drafted these Pokemon. So first things first, obviously with a bunch of new stuff being included in the Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra, for example, things like Dracovish getting their access to their hidden ability, there was a lot of discussion over if things should be banned or not. Things like Pheromosa, which we ultimately decided to ban. But there was also things like Dracovish, which for some reason I tried to get this thing banned. I thought it was worthy of being banned, but for some reason no one else in the league really seemed to agree with me, and I was like, all right, then I'm drafting it. And so I did. Big shout out to my buddy Jose, who is also a coach in the Vitality Draft League, who kind of took it upon himself to help me draft around this thing, and so that help was much appreciated. So yeah, first overall pick for me, well, not overall in the draft, but first pick was Dracovish, which I believe cost me 17 points out of a maximum of 20 points. So this thing wasn't even maximum points. I was like, this thing's a steal. So I picked it up, I snagged it, and here's the set that I don't really see any reason not to run. Well, okay, there's obviously you can swap the abilities in and out, but basically just run like this and then like crunch. For the most part, I feel like that's all that I'm really ever gonna need, and then just max attack adamant. Like, I'm not even gonna run a fourth move slot. I'm gonna throw it in defense, sure. Like, this thing is so strong. It's basically gonna be the premier wall breaker on the Boston Buizels. I forgot to mention that the team name is the Boston Buizels. I've had that name for like 6 years now, and I'm never gonna leave it. I can't wait for Floatzel to come back into the games. Anyway, yeah, Choice Banded Dracovish. This thing has a 75 base speed. It actually has a pretty decent speed tier for what it is, and then even with base 90 attack adamant, this thing's going to be hitting extremely hard, even with the coverage moves. Like, I was looking at like what kind of Pokemon are, water absorbers, Pokemon that are immune to Fish's Rend. How well can they take coverage moves from this thing? And there's not a lot, really. Like, a well-played Dracovish has no switch-ins at all. So I'm pretty excited to use this thing. I'll go more into detail a little bit later, because okay, I counted it up. There's only 5 Pokemon in the entire draft that were drafted that have an ability that makes them immune to water. I'll get into that later, though. So next pick, obviously, if you guys didn't know, obviously the thing has been banned, so you probably haven't played with it much on the ladder, but it now has access to Sand Rush, which is pretty cool because while it does lose a lot of power on things like Fish's Rend and Crunch by not having Strong Jaw, it does make that 75 base speed a lot more powerful, because I believe even with adamant, like a non-boosting speed nature in the sand with Sand Rush, this thing's going to be outspeeding, like I want to say it's going to be comparable to like Dragapult, which is pretty crazy. and obviously can hit that thing with a crunch. And like, who needs a strong jaw to knock out a Dragapult? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, Sand Rush is going to be pretty nice. So of course, my next thing on my mind was let me get a really good Sandstream Pokemon, and so I got Tyranitar, probably the Sandstream Pokemon. Also has Unnerve if I ever want to run that. I feel like Unnerve actually is underrated in certain formats, like draft formats, because there are a lot of people will run like for example, like someone has a Seismitoad, they'll run the Grass Berry that weakens grass moves, because obviously that's the move that's gonna be used to knock it out. So Unnerve could potentially stop that. Like if I'm in versus a Ferrothorn and I'm packing Fire Blast, there's no Aqua Berry gonna be eaten when I'm running Unnerve, which is pretty cool. Basically could help me pick up a KO on certain things. Like if I want to run Ice Beam and Yachi Berry, and someone's packing a Yachi Berry, like they aren't safe if I have Unnerve, which is a nice thing to think about, a nice thing to consider, and could come in handy at certain points. But I think in general, Sandstream is of course going to be the primary ability on this thing. And the other thing, we voted on if we're going to maintain legacy moves, which are I literally did air quotes, but you can't see me. But so legacy moves are things that have been cut since Sword and Shield. So that includes Hidden Power, Return, Frustration, Heal Order, I think is one of them. But then the other one, of course, is Pursuit. We decided to vote, and then we decided that Hidden Power would be banned, but the other moves would stay. So things like Return and Frustration are still in the game, or not still in the game, are going to be allowed in this league, but and Pursuit as well. So that, you know, Pursuit is probably the one thing. Losing Pursuit is what made Tyranitar not as good as it once was this generation, I think. So being able to have access to that again is going to be pretty huge for Tyranitar, and I'm pretty excited to trap things like Latias, Alakazam, things like that. Alakazam could land a Focus Blast, or I guess Latios also has Aura Sphere too. But I feel like Tyranitar in the sand with a good amount of HP, maybe an Assault Vest, you'd probably tank one of those. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. Pursuit is just good too, just to, you know, not even to KO or to trap certain Pokemon, but mainly just to get damage on something that I want damage on and not let it switch out for free. Like if there's a offensive Pokemon that Tyranitar can switch into, and then I want some chip damage on it so that, you know, my Scarf Dracovish can come in later and KO it with a crunch, then I'll do that, you know, and it's a pretty useful move. So yeah, that's Tyranitar. I feel like I don't need to go too much into, you know, what Tyranitar does. I feel like he's been a pretty popular Pokemon for a long time. Yeah, solid speed for a very bulky offensive Pokemon. I mean, 61 being your lowest stat is really not much to complain about. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to have this thing on the team. And then next, I wanted something with Volt Switch. I wanted something powerful. I wanted something immune to Earthquake and resistant to fighting moves. So I picked up one of the best looking Pokemon, Zapdos. I really did think about getting Galarian Zapdos, but ended up going with this because this thing just has way more options compared to its Galarian brother. What I did like about Galarian Zapdos was its Defiant, because I was in the early stages of this draft, I was thinking, let me get a Sticky Web user, and like, so I can take advantage of Adamant Banded Dracovish with the webs up, and then if they defog it away, then I have Zapdos to become an even bigger threat. But I ultimately abandoned that plan. But I got Zapdos round 3, which I think is super, super cool Pokemon. This thing just got so much better with a few moves, like it got Hurricane, it got Weather Ball, and considering that I have a Weather Pokemon, that means that Zapdos is going to have access to a 100 base power Rock special move, which is, you know, not a lot of people are going to see that coming. But also this thing, what I love about Zapdos is that it's so good offensively and defensively. It has, you know, Thunderbolt, Volt Switch. It has Heat Wave. It has Hurricane now. It has Weather Ball, which is just always great. And then it also has, Roost, other defensive moves. No, but basically you could run I can run Boots, which is very helpful versus this thing. It gets defog, so it's my main defogger really. Or I could run Specs with Thunderbolt, Hurricane, Heat Wave, something like that. But what I think is going to be really nice for this thing is being able to run Volt Switch, Roost, Defog, another move, and be able to come in on certain Pokemon and then Volt Switch out to bring in the big hitter like Dracovish, which is going to be probably one of the primary uses for this Pokemon. But do not underestimate its offensive power either, because what do you mean? I mean 125 base special attack. I can run this very defensively and still hit hard, and so if I want to run max special attack, then watch the hell out. Of course, static being the other big thing with this Pokemon too is going to be a great switch in for big offensive threats like Melmetal, fighting types like Lopunny. Anytime they click a move, even U-turn, it's going to be taking that chance of getting static, which is huge. Especially considering Zapdos is resistant to U-turn, so it's a pretty big risk clicking U-turn, because you're not doing much damage and there's a 30% chance you're just going to get paralyzed, which is pretty cool. So I'm pretty excited about Zapdos. These top 3 are going to be probably my top 3 for the whole draft, which is awesome. Up next, picked up Cobalion. Great steel type, great fighting type. Has a lot more of defense than you would expect from this thing. Only 90 base attack isn't really that strong, but 129 base defense is great, and 108 speed tier is not bad either. So yeah, mainly with this thing, I was like, I need a steel type. I need something that has over base 100 speed. And then Jose suggested Cobalion, because I think he's used Cobalion a few times, and I was like, yeah, I actually really like the sound of that. Because not only does this thing also get, strong close combats, Iron Heads, but it also gets a lot of great utility moves like Stealth Rock, Volt Switch, and other stuff. Taunt, it does get Taunt. For some reason in my head I was like, does this get Taunt? I don't know if it gets Taunt, but it does, which is really cool. So this thing can, if I want to run Taunt, Stealth Rocks, Volt Switch, and then just close combat as the last move, that's a pretty good lead set. If I want to run Swords Dance, Iron Head, close combat, and then Mega or Poison Jab. I mean, no, why would you need Poison Jab when you have steel moves? I don't know, Substitute. I could run Substitute. Thunder Wave is another option. Zen Headbutt, depending on what I'm up against. So this thing has great potential to be a very important support and defensive Pokemon, as well as being a huge offensive threat with Swords Dance, or even a Choice Band or something with Volt Switch. It could be kind of fire. For example, if I am up against a team and I notice that a lot of their Pokemon aren't that fast, maybe I could get away with running Adamant Cobalion and put a Choice Band on that thing. Or even a Choice Scarf Adamant maybe, and then just have Volt Switch 3 attacks so that I can get momentum. I don't know, crazy things could happen. But it's great to have, obviously Tyranitar was my first Stealth Rocker, but it's good to have multiple Stealth Rockers in my opinion, so that I never feel like I have to run Stealth Rock with this guy because he's my only guy. If Tyranitar was my only Stealth Rocker, I feel like it wouldn't be able to put in as much work. I wouldn't be able to run a banded Pursuit set because I'd need to run Stealth Rocks because it's my only Stealth Rocker, or I would just have to forego Stealth Rocks in general, which is not something that I want to do. So it's good that these two can kind of pass the Stealth Rock baton between each other depending on the matchup. So pretty cool, pretty exciting. Having a Steel type is basically necessary, and I'm pretty happy with this one. Yeah. Up next, I wanted a Grass type, and I wanted something that had good recovery, and I wanted a Poison type. And I was looking at Grass types, Poison types, and I saw Roserade, and I was like, that's just too good. That's perfect. It loses hidden power, of course, so Technician isn't really going to be as nice. But what I really do like about this thing is it also has a lot of versatility. So basically, if you can't tell, what I'm going with this draft in a lot of ways is Pokemon that have a lot of defensive utility as well as offensive presence. So being a grass poison type is actually pretty nice. Like, being a poison type means you can switch into fighting types, you can switch into bug moves, you can switch into fairy moves, and then being a grass type means I can switch into water moves, I can switch into grass moves, and so a lot of great defensive options here. And then, having that base 90 speed and base 125 special attack means that this thing is also going to be hitting back really hard, even if I don't invest in it. It's the same special attack stat as Zapdos, which is, kind of crazy when you think about it, considering Zapdos is like a legendary bird. But yeah, things like the Choice Scarf are pretty viable on this thing. I could run Expert Belt, sure. I don't want to run Heavy Duty Boots because I want to make sure I absorb Toxic Spikes. But Assault Vest is an option. Life Orb, I think, is an option. Black Sludge over Leftovers, of course. Rocky Helmet, why not? Rocky Helmet. And then Natural Cure is kind of fire. Like, I've heard of and maybe ran like Rest Roserade, so that you rest and then switch out, and the Natural Cure wakes you up, so you get basically a free heal. And I think that's probably one of its better abilities at this point. But Roserade doesn't have the best physical defense, so you don't want to be taking too many physical attacks, and there's only a 30% chance, so it's not great. And then Technician, it was great with Hidden Power, because that means you'd have like a 90 base power, like Hidden Power Fire, but with it gone, it's not great. I think there's only things like Magical Leaf, which you can run, but like you're gonna want to run Giga Drain or Leaf Storm most of the time, so I don't know if it's really worth it. Spikes, I didn't even think about it. Spikes and Toxic Spikes. Stun Spore, Toxic, 100% accurate Toxic, might I add. Sleep Powder, all these are great options, plus Weather Ball. This also gives Weather Ball, if you didn't know. So I got the Sandstorm, I got strong rock moves on this and Zapdos. Plus Synthesis Recovery, and what was the other thing I wanted to mention? Aromatherapy, right. So it also can serve as kind of like a last-ditch cleric. It doesn't have like Wish or anything, but Aromatherapy can be super nice against the right team, and can save the game at certain points. So I think it's a nice thing to have. Plus, great coverage moves, Extrasensory, Dazzling Gleam. Probably won't run those too often, considering I'm gonna mostly want to run poison and grass moves. But super good Pokemon. Super excited to have it on the team. I actually completely forgot that it gets Spikes and Toxic Spikes. That's so good. I'm so excited. And then I picked up Gardevoir. I needed a Fairy. I didn't have a Psychic either, so I was like, Gardevoir. Right, this thing, exactly what I was talking about before, has a impressive offensive presence as well as being a great defensive presence. What fighting types are going to switch into? Like, I know I have Gobalion and Tyranitar that are super weak to fighting, but I've already got Zapdos resists it, Roserade resists it, and so does Gardevoir. So fighting types are not going to have an easy time versus this team. Sorry, just waiting for the music to drop. But having a Fairy type is huge. They have a lot of key resistances, and of course the immunity to Dragon prevents opponents from spamming that Dragon move that they have. But aside from Moonblast and Psychic on this thing, I also really like that it gets knockoff. I was also looking for a knockoff user, which I'll get to later, but this thing does also get knockoff, so it could come in handy. Mystical Fire for coverage is pretty nice now. It also gets Taunt, it gets Teleport, it gets Thunder Wave, it gets Trick, it gets Will-O-Wisp, it gets Triple Axle, but it also gets Wish. I've used Mega Gardevoir as like a Wish passer. And what was the other thing? Memento and Healing Wish are super nice. Like, if I want to play Reckless with my Dracovish early game, and it ends up taking damage or getting burned or something, then I can, late game, I can just Healing Wish it back to full health, and suddenly it's a big threat once again, which is pretty cool. And Synchronize, not great. Telepathy, useless in singles, but Trace can be a super cool ability. Gardevoir actually switches in on Flygon in lower tiers because It traces levitate, so it makes itself immune to the ground moves, and then it's also immune to the dragon moves, of course, because it's a fairy type. So it basically is a hard counter to most Flygons in lower tiers, which is pretty cool. Not really something you expect from what looks like a pretty frail Pokemon. Obviously, the defensive side is much more frail, but strong special attack, special defense, and okay speed, making like Choice Scarf, Choice Specs very viable, especially with Trick. Like something that probably one of the most common sets I've run with Gardevoir is like Choice Scarf, Trick, Healing Wish, Dual Stab, and I feel like that is a very solid thing, because like with the Scarf, you're super fast, outspeeding a lot of things, but even without the Scarf, you're going to be outspeeding most defensive threats. So depending on the team matchup, depending on what you might have knocked out already with Moonblast, maybe you don't even want the Scarf, maybe trick that thing away. So I'm pretty excited about this thing. It has a lot of really cool options, and I think it's going to be a great team member. Next, so looking at the team so far, I basically had 100 base speed Zapdos and 108 base speed Cobalion. Those are my fastest Pokemon. I was like, okay, I really need to up my speed game, and I completely forgot about this Pokemon, Swellow. It's so fast. I forgot how fast it was, but it hasn't been in Sword and Shield, so I haven't really used it in like a year. And I saw this thing, Jose suggested it too, and I was like, oh my god, that's perfect. 125 base speed. That's so fast. It's perfect. What does this thing hit? 383. Like, that's huge. It doesn't outspeed a lot of things, but not a lot of things, but it doesn't outspeed, like Zeraora. It doesn't outspeed Dragapult, but it does outspeed most things. And this thing is no slouch on the offensive side either, which is really cool. It also gives me an option for a secondary defog, which is pretty exciting. It gets Baton Pass, which is allowed. It gets defog. Alright, I said defog. What was the other thing I wanted to mention? Tailwind. Yeah, it gets Tailwind, which I think is really nice for Pokemon like Dracovish on my team. Can make them into a much more offensive, frightening threat. Maybe I want to run Strong Jaw, but I want the speed, so I can give him the Sandstorm boost with Tailwind while also still having Strong Jaw, which is really cool. And this thing has a lot of different options too. Like, there's no real guarantee that you're going to switch into it safely, because unless you have like something, like you basically need a rock or a steel type to switch into this thing. And if you don't have one of those, you have to make a 50-50 call if it's going to be running the special set or the physical set. So basically what that means is you either run Flame Orb, Guts, Brave Bird, Return, or the other option, which can be really fun, is Choice Specs, Scrappy, which also means Ghost types don't switch in, Boom Burst, which is so crazy that they gave this thing that move, but it makes the Choice Specs set into a much stronger Pokemon, which is pretty cool. I think literally they didn't even run Choice Specs ever. Like, why would you? But Stab Boom Burst just makes it so much more powerful. Yeah, I think they even boosted its special attack by like 10 base points in like Gen 7, I want to say. Pretty cool. And the other thing, of course, is this is a really great U-turn user. U-turn on the rock type coming in, and in comes Dracovish, and now what you gonna do? And I mean, I don't like the sound of this, but I've definitely thought of it, like heavy duty boots, because this thing will certainly appreciate it, being a pretty frail Pokemon and being weak to rocks. But I could maybe run like Scrappy heavy duty boots with like U-turn, Roost, Defog, and like a last move, like maybe like Tailwind. Yeah, like that's a pretty solid support set, right? Like max out the HP, max out the speed, and suddenly this thing can, become kind of an interesting little support Pokemon, which is pretty cool. I don't know if this will be my preferred set. Probably won't be, because it doesn't really have much in the way of, the thing about Swellow is it really relies on its item, either the Flame Orb or the Choice Specs, and well, maybe the Boom Burst would be still strong without the Choice Specs, but his coverage moves like Heat Wave aren't going to be hitting quite as hard without the specs. But you could see it. I could see it. And the cool thing is that the defog, if I want to run offensive Zapdos with 3 attacks Roost or something, or just choice specs, but I still need a defogger, then I can use Swellow if I need to. So I'm pretty excited about this thing. It hasn't seen the meta in Sword and Shield, so I have a lot of experimenting to do with it, but I'm excited at the theories and the prospects. I mentioned earlier I was talking about how I wanted a knockoff user, and I also really wanted a fire type because I've got my cores here. I've got Gardevoir as my fairy, I've got Cobalion as my steel, and I've got Dracovish as my dragon. So dragon, steel, fairy core. I've got also my water with Dracovish, for my grass with Roserade. So I was like, I need a fire type to complete the fire, water, grass core. And then Incineroar was just sitting there at a nice 11 points. And I was like, this thing is an absolute steal at 11 points. This thing, like, just the addition of heavy duty boots into the game made this Pokemon so much better. Like, I remember back in Sun and Moon it was like an NU Pokemon, but now it is holding its space in like the top tiers of UU, which is such a huge difference. Also, getting close combat is nice, but I feel like that's not even that common a thing to use. Also, shoutouts to Ray, coach of the Austin Toros, who used this thing in the previous VDL season 2, and had a lot of success with it, and kind of inspired me to do the same. So yeah, boots are going to be run most often. Intimidate also is such an important thing to have in a draft, I feel. And then knockoff, like, just knockoff on anything is great. Plus this thing gets stab and is strong. So I think just knocking off those items, knocking off heavy duty boots so that the opponent takes stealth rock damage or spike damage, and makes it easier for the other offensive Pokemon to finish the job. And just being a fire type is great. Being able to run Flare Blitz, this thing gets a ridiculous amount of coverage moves: Earthquake, Drain Punch, Iron Head, Leech Life, Low Kick, Close Combat. Did I mention Close Combat? It gets Scorching Sands, and it gets Swords Dance too. So this could be a sweep around its own. Thunder Punch. Yeah, like look, it gets U-turn. The utility of this thing is really what draws me to it. Like I don't see myself as running like a super offensive Incineroar very often. What I do really love about it is its ability to run U-turn or Parting Shot as momentum. It can run Will-O-Wisp. It can run Taunt, and then Roar. Even I feel like Roar is not the most common thing these days, but having that utility, being able to switch in with Intimidate, tank a hit, and then U-turn out, or U-turn on the switch, whatever. Like, having that utility makes this thing extremely, extremely useful. Basically, it has an easy time forcing the opponent to switch, because if I switch in on a physical attacker and intimidate it, it's going to want to switch out to reset that attack stat. If I switch in on a more defensive Pokemon and taunt, it's going to want to switch out because it wants to reset that taunt, and I can take advantage of that to U-turn or Parting Shot, maybe force another switch, and then also bring in my offensive Pokemon to either just launch off a big hit or even go for a setup move, which is awesome. And being a very defensive utility Pokemon, I feel like 60 base speed is nice too. Like, it's obviously not very fast, it's not great, but it's definitely not slow, and it's going to be able to outspeed a lot of defensive Pokemon that either don't have that high base speed or aren't going to be running much speed at all. So being able to get off that faster taunt or knockoff is going to be quite nice, in my opinion. And I'm pretty excited to have this as one of the Buizels this year. And next, I needed a ground type. I needed a bulky ground type. I had a lot of debating for this pick. Mudsdale was a top pick. Golurk was another thing I was thinking of. It's not the bulkiest, but it is a ground type, and I also really wanted a ghost type. And I just like Golurk a lot because it got Poltergeist, and that makes it into much more of an offensive threat. But I ended up ultimately deciding that Sandaconda would be the way to go, because this thing cost a few points less than Mudsdale, which let me get a few things in the late game, in the late draft. as well as just, being pretty bulky. Like 125 defense is solid. Plus, it has really solid attack at 107, and 71 base speed too is really nice, especially for a Pokemon that I'm going to probably be running mostly defensively. This adds yet another Stealth Rock user to the team. It gets Glare, which I think is super useful. And then, Stab Earthquake's going to be hitting hard. It doesn't get a lot of other coverage moves. It gets Rock Slide. I could run like a Scorching Sand set to try to catch people, burn people, and I could run like Max Spadef Scorching Sands and maybe just start walling things if I get a few lucky burns. The other thing though, it gets some really nice abilities. Shed Skin is pretty cool. I can run Rest, and if I get lucky, then that Shed Skin activates and gets rid of the Rest early. It gets Coil, so I can run Rest, Coil, Body Press, Earthquake or something, and then I'm boosting my own defense to the point where Body Press is doing more, and then Stab Earthquakes, of course, hitting hard. So lots of interesting options. It does get a few cool coverage moves like Fire Fang. It gets Brutal Swing, but they're not strong, so they're not gonna be that useful. But it's interesting. Like don't count it out. It might happen. It gets Iron Head too, which is not bad. I can even run Iron Defense Body Press. But the other thing, this is a secondary Sand Setter for the team. So if I want to bring Tyranitar, but I want to bring the Unnerved set specifically, I can bring this thing with Sand Spit. Whenever the Pokemon gets hit, Sandstorm begins, which is nice because if my opponent also happens to have a Weather user, I can have this thing in versus it. And even if, I'm faster, like typically the faster Weather gets set first, and then the slower Weather then will overtake that Weather. But since Sandaconda has a nice speed, that could be a problem if it had Sandstream. But with Sand Spit, it's when I'm hit. So the slower Pokemon will set it first, and then I'll be able to set it up after they go for an attack versus me, which is cool. It's obviously not the best. It's not great. It's definitely not as good as Sandstream, but it is an option, and it's something that my opponents will have to think about. And Sand Veil is another option. If I want to just run this thing as like sub-coil with Sand Veil and Tyranitar and just try to dodge a few moves, and then by the time the sand has ended, I'm at plus. I've got like 2 coils and a substitute or something. It could be crazy. I mean, definitely against the right team, but it could be crazy. Next, I wanted a Rapid Spinner, and Cryogonal was sitting there, being an Ice type with Levitate, and I was like, okay, yeah. I think Cryogonal has gotten a lot better with heavy duty boots as well, and having a nice base 105 speed is pretty cool, and 135 special defense is not bad either. This thing can be a great check to certain things. Like I'm thinking about running like Freeze Dry on this thing to catch like a Seismitoad or a Gastrodon that my opponent might bring against my Dracovish, which would be a pretty great way to eliminate those walls, catch them off guard. But this thing gets a lot of great utility, which is the main reason that I drafted it, of course. It gets Light Screen and Reflect, does it? Does it get Light Screen? I might have just been talking. Nothing. Okay, it gets Reflect, so there's that. But it gets Rapid Spin and it gets Defog, which is pretty cool. Not a lot of Pokemon I can think of that get both of those. Haze is there. Ice Shard Priority can be nice in the right situation. It gets Knockoff as well. Oh, it does get Light Screen. What am I saying? Why couldn't I see that? Magic Coat, also super nice. Can make this into like an anti-lead. Just click Magic Coat turn 1 and bounce the Sticky Web or the Stealth Rock back on my opponent or something. And then, of course, having Rapid Spin is super nice because that means I don't have to think about when I set my hazards up. Like I can just go for them turn 1 and get the maximum amount of damage off with my hazards, and then if my opponent sets them up as well, then I can just Rapid Spin them away and not, defog mine away as well. Aurora Veil is also an option. Does this thing get Hail? It does, so maybe I can run Hail Aurora Veil and then go for this. I don't know, but actually, now that I think about it, Hail, and then that gives Weather Ball Ice to Zapdos and Roserade, so that actually could be kind of fire. But yeah, that's it with this thing. Just, run Boots, run Rapid Spin, it gets Recover, and then just like run an Ice move like Freeze Dry, and it's pretty cool. Pretty cool Pokemon. So I'm excited. And 105 base speed, did I mention that already? I think I did, but 105 base speed, another great speed tier to have on the team. So next, Cleric, normal type. Not very excited about this Pokemon. Like, this is really not my style of Pokemon to use, but I think it is important for a draft league. And considering Spectrier is in this league, I think it was really important to have a normal type. But I do also have things like Incineroar and Tyranitar, who are going to be great switches into Spectrier. But I just don't want... I want to make sure I have an immunity, so it can't just click Specs or Scarf Shadow Ball as willingly as it might against other teams. But you probably are familiar with Audino if you're familiar with this game at all. Leftovers is probably going to be the main thing. Regenerator is probably the best ability in the game right now. And I could even run Boots Regenerator too, so that Stealth Rock doesn't rack up as I'm switching around. But of course the main thing with this is, Wish, Protect, Heal Bell, Healing Wish, just supporting the team, making sure that they're all healthy, and then the coverage move of my choice depending on the matchup. I can run Thunderbolt, Ice Beam. What are the other options? It gets Flamethrower, right? Yeah, Flamethrower. These are all great options. It gets Knockoff too, so a lot of great utility, and it's going to be a great bulky switch into a lot of things, and hopefully we'll keep the rest of the team very healthy, and I'm very excited. Psychic too. Shadow Ball. Yeah, this could be a great counter to Spectrier, because like, what is it going to hit me with? Mud Shot. And Surf too. This thing gets... What is it with the earlier generation normal types that just get so much coverage moves? Yawn. Also, I see that. Probably one of the slowest Pokemon on my team, but 50 base speed, not that bad considering what this thing is going to be trying to do. Yeah, what is actually my lowest speed? 105, 71, 125, 60, 125. Wow, I actually have a pretty fast team. Wow, is 60? No, Audino is my slowest at 50. So that's not bad, considering there's a lot of Pokemon out there that have way lower than that. And of course, the last pick with 2 points, I picked up Thwacky. I can't believe that this thing was only 2 points. I was like, this is like day one. I was like, this is gonna be one of my last picks, because this thing is extremely good. Like, it's not strong, obviously. Like, look at his stats. It's not strong. 80 base speed isn't bad, though. 85 base attack, not that bad. Considering it can run Eviolite, that makes the 70 base defense and 60 base special defense pretty solid. But of course, you know what I'm gonna say already. Grassy Surge, 2 points for Grassy Surge. Are you kidding me? Like, the support for the team just goes on and on. The grassy terrain weakens Earthquake, so that Tyranitar, Incineroar, Cobalion don't have to worry as much about taking Earthquakes. It might force people to run like high horsepower or something versus me or Stomping Tantrum on certain Pokemon, just because they're afraid of the Grassy Surge. And then, of course, what was the really selling point on this thing was Grassy Glide. I didn't have much in the way of priority at all, I think, on my team, but now I have a nice strong priority in Grassy Glide, which, I mean, you know what Rillaboom does, but just, this is a mini Rillaboom. If I weaken the team, this can come in at the end of the game and just click Grassy Glide a few times and finish the game up, which is pretty cool. Obviously, it gets a lot of great utility as well in U-Turn, Knockoff, Swords Dance, Taunt, all kinds of cool stuff. So obviously very cheap Pokemon, probably won't come to many games, but it might. And considering it was only worth 2 points and it was my last pick, I feel like I just got away with murder on this one. Like, this thing is just so good. I was really debating getting Floatzel too because the 115 base speed was really nice, but I think this was overall the better pick. And with Floatzel, I basically just really wanted to use it because I love Floatzel. But I'm out for blood this season because nobody took me seriously about Dracovish, and I have to prove some points. So that's the Boston Buizels Season 3 draft. Does this thing get like synthesis or something? It gets Leech Seed. So yeah, between Leech Seed and Grassy Surge, Grassy Terrain, it's going to be supporting the team a lot, which I'm always a fan of. Like, literally, if this thing just didn't even have any moves, I think it would be worth 2 points just because it can come in instead of the Grassy Surge for the whole team. It's pretty sweet. It's pretty sweet. Like, if I could just give me U-Turn, Grassy Glide, and an Eevee Light, and then just like literally like Adamant, like this set. Like, I will pay 2 points for this set in this draft. Like, literally, if I can't switch it, the moves up at all, I will pay 2 points for this set. But I paid 2 points and I still get Drain Punch, Knockoff, and Fake Out, Leech Seed, Substitute, Swords Dance, Taunt. This thing is so good. I can't believe nobody took this before me, really, and I can't believe no one else was even really considering it. This thing is NU by usage. It's not NFE. It's not even PU. It's NU. Okay. Well, that's the team, and I'm very excited about I can actually use boxes now, so I don't have to, make 2 separate teams to include all of these. So it's pretty cool. I didn't really know what new box meant until I started trying it with this. And now we can also look at the rest of the teams that I'm going to be up against in Season 3. A few of these might change based on, like, people are making transactions and stuff, or might trade out certain Pokemon. But as I said earlier, I only count 5 Pokemon that are water immunities. And that they are, so like, okay, first team, I don't see a water immunity. Slowbro is like the Dracovish switch in, I guess. Yeah. Like, it's going to be tough to just keep switching into Fish's Rend all the time, especially if I can get that Slowbro with like a crunch or 2. I don't know. Like, considering this is basically the only Pokemon on the team that can switch into Fish's Rend, it basically makes my job a lot easier. Like, I know that it's either going to come in or he's going to like make a prediction, and there's no bad side effect really to just clicking it anyway, because it gets damage. It probably gets a good amount of damage, and I can always just switch out on the following turn. I mean, it can teleport and stuff, but like, it just makes it a lot easier to click Fish's Rend when the opponent doesn't have an immunity. This team, Lapras, there's one Lapras, which I don't think is the best check to Dracovish, because it really likes to run Boots because it has that rock weakness being Ice type. But the only way it really tanks coverage moves is if it has leftovers. So if I can get rocks up, I can determine. If I can determine if it's leftovers or not. If it's leftovers, then my plan is to get rocks up, and then it takes 25% on switching, which means it's not going to be it's not going to be a 3-hit KO anymore. But if it has Boots, then I know it's not going to be recovering that much. Plus, I can knock them off. And Araquanid, number 2. Water Absorb. It's not the ability you want to run on this thing most of the time. Most of the time, you're going to want to run the other one, Liquid Bubble. Was it? What is it? What actually is it? Water Bubble, because that powers it up a lot. But of course, you just look at this thing's stats. Like, it doesn't have great defenses compared to its special defense, so coverage moves are going to be doing a good amount of damage. It's crazy. I don't know why they let me draft this thing. Like, look at this whole team. This is his only water type. I mean, I don't want to talk too much crap because I could get shown up, but like basically versus my team, he's got to run Water Absorb. And like if I see that, then I just click coverage move once or twice, maybe a Stealth Rock up, and I'm in a good position, and then I can just start clicking the Fish's Rend once this thing's gone. So it's interesting. This team, Empoleon is the best switch-in. There is no water immunity. Empoleon probably a solid switch-in, but over time, especially with no recovery outside of leftovers, this thing is going to be taking damage, and it's not going to be a switch-in for long. And the other thing too, like, I know Dracovish is slow, but I can run Sand Rush on it, and then like Dragapult's the only thing that might outspeed it versus unlike all of these teams. Sand Rush, Lycanroc, go. That's something to think about. Where was I? Okay, this team. No water immunity. Suicune is probably the best switch-in. I mean, Suicune is a pretty good rest user, but it's kind of similar to Empoleon. It doesn't get recovery outside of rest, and damage is going to start racking up. I can go into Zapdos on this thing. Like, there's a lot of options, and being able to just click damage moves for free is super nice for Dracovish. So I'm curious to see what happens. Here's another team. Does this team... Okay, I was going to say, does this team have water type? But then I forgot Keldeo was a water type. But I don't think Keldeo is going to be taking even... how much is Keldeo taking from a Fish's Rend? It's going to take a lot. Plus I can run Psychic Fangs. Knock that thing out probably with Strong Jaw. Melmetal might actually be like the best switch-in. But I feel like that's not even going to take a Fish's Rend that well. And... plus a little damage, a little like switch in once or twice, and that's it. Okay, look at this team. Weavile is the fastest, but oh no, what is it? Is it Mega Manectric faster than Weavile? It is. Mega Manectric hits 135, but I'm pretty sure that is not going to be outspeeding a Dracovish and Sand. So that's pretty cool for me. Maybe I shouldn't be giving this a glimpse into my team strategy, but I'm literally this is just like something I kind of noticed, and now I'm really looking at it. Once again, I don't see a water immunity. Tangrowth is probably the best switch-in. Yeah, like everything else dies. But I do see a Sandstream Dracozolt core here. Palisand, Gigalith, Dracozolt, that's actually a fire core because of Shore Up, getting more HP back in the sand. Yeah, I really like this team a lot. But of course, no water immunity, so it's going to be really tough to switch in, except for Tangrowth. You could run Rocky Helmet. Tangrowth is probably a pretty good option, but you're still going to be taking damage. I guess it does hit Regenerator, so it's probably one of the better switch-ins to Dracovish. But yeah, maybe you catch me running Protective Pads, Dracovish, so you can't hit me with the Rocky Helmet. Ray's team, no water immunity. I'm not even sure what the best switch-in would be. Like, Defensive Aegislash, Rotom Wash, Druddigon. You could run Rocky Helmet, Rough Skin, Druddigon. But Protective Pads is sounding even better. Yeah, it's interesting. Let's see. Seismitoad, #1 Dracovish check. That thing stayed OU until Dracovish got banned, and has now fallen down to RU or even NU. And this thing is probably one of the better, immunities, but it's not going to enjoy taking coverage moves, and it doesn't have any immediate recovery outside of leftovers. So if I can knock that off, I can get some hazards to stay up, then things are going to be looking pretty good for Dracovish. Actually, I guess Avalugg is actually a pretty good switch-in too, but that thing's in a similar position where it does have recover, but it is weak to rock, so it's going to want to run boots, and if I can knock those off and get hazards up, I mean, like, obviously no Pokemon can 1v6 a team most of the time, but I'm just talking about how much support Dracovish needs to break through certain teams, and it's not much compared to like most Pokemon. Speaking of Pokemon that don't need much support, Zygarde, so gotta watch out for that. But yeah, this team, Amoonguss, I guess. There's no water immunity. Alomomola and Amoonguss are actually very good regenerator cores, so that's definitely don't want to sleep on that. But I got Psychic Fangs for Amoonguss, and Alomomola is not going to enjoy taking hits. I mean, it'll probably enjoy taking coverage moves, but like a Banded, Strong Jaw, Adamant, Fish's Rend is not going to enjoy taking that multiple times. This team, Tangela, Registeel? I don't know. Like, there's no water immunity once again. Tangela is probably a pretty good switch-in, similar to Tangrowth. Knock off that Eviolite though, and things aren't going to be looking so good. This team, once again, no water immunity. How many am I on? Three water immunities. Toxapex Ferrothorn though, very solid core against Dracovish. But you know, Psychic Fangs for this, something for this. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I thought, you know, a bunch of people would. I thought it was like everybody was gonna have to draft a water immunity. Like I thought that was kind of the deal. And here's Vaporeon, so that's the 4th water immunity, I think. But yeah, Wish being its only recovery can be troublesome sometimes, maybe. And depending on, you know, the spread, you know, coverage moves are going to be doing damage. Knock off leftovers, and you know, it could go downhill from there. Regieleki, actually one of the Pokemon that can probably outspeed this thing in Sand. Outspeed Dracovish, I'm saying. But maybe that means I just run Strong Jaw that time, because there's no point. This team, no water immunity. Tapu Fini is probably the best switch-in, I guess. Like Celesteela, maybe. But I feel like they might switch in once or twice, but they're not going to enjoy switching it a bunch of times, especially since Celesteela and Tapu Fini both don't have like Recover or Roost. Like Leech Seed is the best recovery for this. Leftovers, like, it just seems like Dracovish doesn't need that much support from the team to just start clicking buttons, which is what makes me excited. This last team, Cacturn, is the 5th water immunity. And it actually does resist, you know, like Crunch and Psychic Fangs. But the other thing is Outrage. Like, Outrage is another move. Like, if my opponent doesn't have a Fairy type or a Steel type or something that resists the Dragon move, like, what's stopping me from clicking that as their water immunity comes in, or their water type? It's interesting. Looking at the rest of the team, Slowking, it might be a solid switch in. Maybe Sliggoo? I don't think this thing has good defense though. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on Dracovish and how, I mean, maybe I'll be proven completely wrong. I would love to see that. But just looking at Dracovish and the teams it's going to be up against, I'm curious to see what people do to play around it. I could see some fire stuff. I hope I do. I hope Dracovish gets stopped in its tracks and I get proven wrong. But I think there's a pretty good chance that Dracovish will prove to be very, very good. So we'll see. But that's the Boston Buizels Season 3 Vitality Draft League draft overview. It went on a little bit long, I apologize, but I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. There will probably be some content for the Vitality Draft League within the next week or two, so look forward to it. Peace out, keep dreaming, goodbye.